Today, for us, we have a PSA, a service announcement for all of the player base, and we have to preface this by saying that no, Xi Jinping has not taken my family hostage, and I have not made this after being promised a lifetime supply of free gacha shit games credits. This is coming purely from independent thought. We are talking about good guilds today. Because, you might have been, of course, one of the players who enjoys checking out every time it comes out the Race to World First to see all of the best guilds progressing on the, the original unnerved state of the bosses, something that practically everyone else will not see when they actually, if ever, they get to those bosses. Sometimes for the banter between NA and EU, sometimes to check which specs are doing well, the strategies being used by good players, etc, etc. Now, something goes, however, a little bit under the radar, because the Race to World First will, of course, be focusing around our own community. So, whenever you check the Race to World First, most of the time you will check out the top guilds, number 1, number 2, number 3. However, even now, many players, for example, would know the name of Fat Shark Yes. They would know the name of Method, they would know the name of BDG, Big Dumb Guild, perhaps even the names of Instant Dollars or other still very high guilds like Pop-Tart Corn Dog or Banhammer, etc, etc. However, there is something that not many of us keep too much attention to, which is of course the Chinese community, the Chinese servers, as well as the Taiwanese servers, as well as the progression around those guilds as well. If we have to be honest, most of the players' knowledge about Chinese guilds is, haha, look at those clowns taking 630 wipes to get through Queen Ansorek. Wait, you think 630 is a lot? Check out this other Chinese guild taking 931 wipes to kill Ansorek, or even 500 wipes to defeat Nexus Princess. That's most of the knowledge players have about Chinese guilds. So for today, I thought it would have been a good idea to remind everyone of the progression we have had in the past few years, in the past basically half a decade, 2 full expansions and this most recent tier in the War Within. Because what is interesting is that after a reasonably slow start, where you can see here in Castelnatria, we had 3 Chinese guilds being in the top 10 of progression for Castelnatria, which was, it was still overshadowed by the 5 EU guilds back then, even though, sure, the 5 EU guilds still in the end lost out to Liquid. You move over to Sanctum of Domination, it's still a domination of EU guilds. This time they also get the World First with Echo, on top of having Pieces, on top of having Method, Aversion. In the top 10, you have the lowest we will have in these 3 expansions of Chinese guilds, with only 2 of them from Asia making the top 10. However, after these 2 tiers, that's where we start ramping up much higher, because for Sepulcher, for the very grueling and very, very wipe demanding tier of Sepulcher, you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Chinese guilds in the top 10. So practically, by all accounts, the best region for highest rated guilds. We have the, congratulations for Echo for finishing first, as well as Method finishing second. This was the tier where Liquid lost the race to Echo, so they went full emo and just killed the boss a few days later. This is the point where Eastern servers would gain the title of having the most guilds in the top 10 over NA or EU. This would continue as well into the next expansion, into Dragonflight, with the first tier with Vault of the Incarnates. You have 1, 2, 3 and 4 Chinese guilds all in the top 10. Again, this time you have 3 guilds from NA, you have Liquid, BDG, as well as Instant Dollars, and 3 from EU, with 4 from China. The only hiccup, the only disappearance of Chinese guilds was, of course, in Aberrus. As you can see, there is no China to be seen anywhere. The reason for that is not that the Chinese guilds suddenly became terrible and disappeared from all the rankings, but it was because the Chinese servers shut down. So, well, they practically had no way to play right as the tier was coming out. They would find a way to play at the very end of Dragonflight when they moved over to the Taiwanese servers. So you are back in the last tier of Dragonflight with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guilds outside of NA or EU in the top 10. They did not need to move to a non-Chinese server for too long because, of course, in this new expansion, as you might know already, the Chinese servers reopened. So all of the players were able to get their accounts back and play again from Chinese servers. And we have now 1, 2, 3, 4, as well as a 5th Korean guild in the top 10 at the end of the War Within's first tier. This totals out in the past 2+1 tier worth of expansions, a world where NA got 17 guilds in the top 10 across 7 different tiers. Europe got 27 guilds in the top 10 across 7 different tiers, and then Asia, but primarily China really, got 26 guilds in the top 10. But of course we are still counting this as a moral victory for the Chinese guilds, mostly because of course they had to go one full tier without basically having any guilds, being the one in Aberrus. So if you did exclude that one simply because they couldn't even compete to begin with, then NA would be at 15, Europe would be at 22, and Asia as a whole would be at 24, putting them ahead of everyone else. So it is an interesting progression over the past couple of expansions to be able to see at this point for basically 4 tiers in a row, if you exclude the Aberrus one where they couldn't possibly even have any. But for the other 4 tiers in a row, you have gotten 4 to 5 Chinese guilds making it into the top 10. Of course, there is one major difference compared to the EU guilds and the NA guilds, but in particular the EU guilds. If you scroll past this very good result, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guilds in the top 10 looks very good. But then if you go past the top 10 and you start scrolling looking for other guilds, you will see EU and US very often, right? Many of the guilds. In fact, in this page exclusively from the EU and the US, you will find the first non-EU or non-US guilds from China at rank 51. So you had to wait 41 ranks to see the 6th best guild from Asia, and then you have to continue to scroll down to find the 2nd one outside of the top 10. This is the 3rd one outside of the top 10, 4th one, and then you have your 5th one, your 6th one, and your 7th one. So you have 5 guilds in the top 10 and then 7 guilds outside the top 10 inside the top 100 for a total of 12 guilds in the top 100 out of the other 88 guilds from EU and NA. So while having 50% of the guilds in the top 10, they actually have only 12% of the top guilds in the top 100. So we can say that most of their results, while still looking very good, are very front-loaded. They're very front-loaded in the top ranks. And if we want to be mean, we could say in these top ranks, because at the end of the day, while being very good, they have still gotten pretty much just one top 3 finish in 7 tiers in a row. If you were to look at all of the top 3 finishes in all of the tiers, the only one where a Chinese guild or an Asian guild in general made top 3 was the Jailer, with Skylan getting 3rd a few hours before Pieces. That's the only one. So it's not, we're not even talking about this kind of top results, but rather these kind of top results are very Asia populated. That is just as far as it goes. Once you start going outside of the top 10, it goes back to being much more heavily favored towards EU and NA. However, I thought it was still something, interesting enough to be considered. Because, every time it happens, when we get to the Race to World First and look at these guilds, you will always end up, knowing about more or less the same 3. And then some spillover on a few other guilds you have gotten to know over the years, as we already mentioned a few of them, but not really very often from China. Even when you try to go and look for Race to World First coverage, for example, you often saw links from Liquid, from Echo, from Method, even from other guilds that you could get to see their progression, but not really the streams directly from the Chinese guilds, from Bilibili and the stream service they use to stream WoW. However, it is still good as a reminder. The fact that overall, technically speaking, in the past 7 raid tiers and 3 expansions, the overall region that has gotten more results in the top 10 in terms of guilds in raid has been Asia. Mostly China, with about 4 results from Korea. I thought it was an interesting thing to point out. It's kind of what we have been seeing already, for example, even in Mythic Plus. If you were, for example, to go and check out right now, right this second, the highest keys currently done in Mythic Plus. You have 1, and then you have 2, and then you have 3, and then you have 4 different top groups in the top 30 of keys, 4 different groups, all from China right now. But kind of like as we mentioned from the raid, even if technically right now many of the top results are from China, usually when it comes time to run in the MDI, for example, or in the Great Push, that's not gonna be the teams that will be winning or competing for the final results. However, I thought it was still nice to give some props, some respect for the results that they have gotten and that they have improved over the years, especially given that, generally speaking, whenever you talk about the world first race and top guilds getting top results, the Chinese guilds won't really get much of any consideration compared to many of the others, even though technically they have been doing better for quite a while now compared to many of the other guilds. So with this PSA about non-EU and non-NA guilds' performances in the raids in the past few years, it is now time to leave each other on this Friday, because of course I have some money definitely coming from my wallet to go and spend on some gacha games, definitely not produced in China. So, with this out of the way, we are now leaving each other. Thank you guys, of course, for watching the video, together with, of course, supporting completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching, see you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, honestly, I like what COVID did to my deliveries. Now, leaving things at the front door without having to actually wait for you to be there is standard practice, which is a very good thing.